Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville on the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ben Snyder.
And I'm Joe Barnhart, and want you to know, if you are not a believer in God, you're not alone. And here in East Tennessee, you can find free thinkers, agnostics, believers, unbelievers. It's the whole point is to have a rational discussion, a show for all of us, and a free. Can you have a religion free of supernaturalism, or can you be an atheist and be religious? That's a whole new topic, but we can discuss those kind of things.
This is a call-in show. However, we have only one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to email us your questions live at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. After the show, there is a meetup for the Atheist Society of Knoxville at Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria. We enjoy having all sorts of people come to converse about whatever you'd like to. We just ask that you be polite, be kind, and not aggressive or violent.
Okay, we got the Rationalists of East Tennessee have activities on Sunday mornings, usually at the community college. And the second Sunday is a book club. Fourth Sunday is reflections gatherings, and it's potluck. So look on the website and maybe find a place that you would enjoy and appreciate.
Visit our websites for additional monthly program details, including times and locations. Today's show is on the Ten Commandments, specifically on the first two or three. And, on Sunday, May 6th, the Rationalists of East Tennessee will host a special event. Their annual public lecture will feature Dr. J. Anderson Thompson, who will talk about how human minds build and believe in gods. Andy is a staff psychiatrist at the University of Virginia and also has his own private practice. Dr. Thompson will discuss how the cognitive neurosciences have mapped out the reasons human minds produce beliefs in gods and other supernatural beings. The lecture will take place at 2 p.m. in the Goings Auditorium of the Pellissippi State Community College. See rationalist.org for directions.
Okay. And you can get feedback to us by email. And that's the address on the screen, Freethought Forum at yahoo.com. And we would appreciate your comments.
All right. A few things happened this past week. Chuck Colson recently died. He was involved in the Watergate scandal.
Oh, yeah.
Converted to Christianity, very strong evangelical form while in prison.
Yeah.
He recently passed away.
Yeah, I read about that.
Also, interesting development in the evangelical community. The evangelicals have started realizing that there is a problem with abstinence-only education, that it does not keep birth rates low and does not stop people from having premarital sex.
This is getting to be a real problem. We probably deserve to have a special topic on this, so that it's so controversial, both among atheists and believers. This is a very controversial topic, and it should be taken quite seriously. And the evangelicals are finally having to realize it is a
serious issue that they just can't ignore.
Yeah. As one Baptist professor in Mercer University says, we in effect can't just put our heads in the sand.
Right.
We have to face reality about what's going on.
And what's healthy.
And we must not confuse a description of what's going on with a prescription of what we think would be better. Describing is not the same as saying prescribe. We have to work figure out what the values are.
So,
And then the Atheist Society, would you mention the Atheist Society? Meets several times. And the Rationalists of East Tennessee meet several times.
Oh yes.
So we guess we can get into that. But are you ready to get into the topic?
Oh, sure.
Okay. The King James Version, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Do you think that presupposes many gods?
It might.
Yeah.
I think it does.
Well, there's a good argument that the reason there are so many passages in the Bible condemning polytheism, that is, many gods, is because there were so many people in the land practicing polytheism.
Right.
And you have many names for gods and God. You have Elohim. And by the way, the word Elohim is a plural
Yes.
of the word El, which is the word for God. Elohim
Right.
is Hebrew for gods. Now, the Hebrew writers, later after the captivity, tried to take these various, it seems to me, various streams of polytheism and rework them
Into a monotheism.
into their monotheism.
Yes.
Along with that, developed monarchy, and along with this, an attempt to establish the capital in Jerusalem, so that you put the head of the state, the major priests, in one place.
Right, the temple state system.
Yes, the temple state is a good way to put it, the temple state system, where the king can watch over to the priests, and the priest, if they get enough power, can watch over the king. But it is a union of church and state.
Yeah, so where they're essentially married to one another.
And an early, Islam, which grew out of the Hebrew tradition partly,
Yes.
simply adopted this union of church and state. And then most Christianity adopted it by the time you got to Constantine.
Yes.
And not until some of the Baptists, working with Jefferson and others, did they say, enough of this, we've killed off enough of each other.
Right, it was the point when they started saying that it was not very wise to marry the state with a particular brand or view of religion due to the social ills it caused.
So no other gods before me. It's one thing for a religion to specify what their traditions are, what their creeds are. It's another thing to rewrite a tradition, and it's certainly another thing to use power and murder to enforce a religion. And unfortunately, when you read some parts of the Old Testament, it is very difficult to miss the point that murder was a major way of enforcing the religion.
Position.
And you had wholesale slaughter.
Right.
In some cases of men, women, and children. Now, you do have a commandment against killing.
Yes.
So that you had a mixture of values going.
Right, but this, of course, one trumped the other. There's a hierarchy that if the values came into...
Have we got a call already? Let's see what we got here.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead. Let's hear from our caller.
Hello, caller.
Hello, this is Faithless Source. I'm sorry I can't be with you guys today, but I'm interested in the subject. What I've read of the Bible, it always seems to me that the first 5 books of the Bible are at least kind of interesting mythology. So I've got a kind of a question here. The first 5 books are called the Pentateuch, and any idea what that word means?
5.
And then the chapters are, of course I can't do it in order, but they're going to be Genesis, Exodus, and then I'm a little fuzzy if it's
Leviticus,
Deuteronomy, and Numbers.
Right.
And of course, we recognize the word Genesis. It comes to us in our language still to mean like beginnings.
Yes.
And Exodus meaning to go out. But numbers. I mean, you number things. But the other two words, I don't have any idea what they might mean. You got any help for us?
Well, Leviticus is built on Levi. It's the priestly codes,
Right.
priestly instructions. Deuteronomy, in my opinion, and the opinion of a number of scholars, is a later work written by what might be called a Hebrew fundamentalist.
Around the time of, what was it, Josiah?
Some thinks it's about the time of Josiah. Yeah. And that it was an attempt to codify even more severely some of the tradition. In other words, to rewrite some of it.
Right.
And then later it was put together as if it were all a collection. And then the myth developed that Moses wrote it all.
Yes.
Although neither of the books claims Moses wrote the whole
Right.
whole book.
None of the 5 books actually, the authors do not identify themselves.
Yeah, we don't know who wrote any of them.
Right.
And in fact, in the end of the last of the 5 books talks about Moses being in a tomb, the location of which is not known until this day.
Right. Deuteronomy, which was written, as many scholars suppose, around the time of King Josiah, which is well after Moses' supposed life.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and can you guys put approximate date on that?
I don't know that I can.
Oh, Josiah is going to be at least around 600. Yeah.
BC.
Yeah, BC, yeah.
Okay, so, and of course, all of that is there for a long time after the alleged time of the Exodus, which I've heard said that if it happened, it may have been around the time of Pharaoh Ramses the Great, and that's right around 270 BC, I believe.
Oh, no. The Exodus...
Say 270?
Sorry, 1200.
Oh, 1200. Yeah, that's
1290.
Right.
Let's say roughly 1300.
Yeah, roughly around there.
If it happened. There's
I probably spoke poorly. I was trying to say 1270 BC.
Yeah. Well, very good. Yeah, there's a big dispute now among archaeologists as to whether we really have enough evidence that an Exodus took place of anything like what's recorded in the or stated in parts of the Bible.
What I've also often read or even heard from various sources is that they don't even have any evidence of them wandering in the desert, of them crossing the Red Sea, or even having been existent there in such large numbers, or that even the killing of the children that Pharaoh supposedly did to the Jews even ever transpired. So,
but it is an interesting story. Sometimes a story that's not historically true can carry a lot of truth in it, as long as you realize it's not historical.
Metaphorically speaking.
Well, it'd be metaphorically speaking, or it can be a story that tells about our aspirations, our dreams, and every culture has probably needed some story of liberation in which people have felt captivity and needed to be released.
It's like the American mythology of our own origins. Of we were under an oppressive regime of England, and we broke forth. Some of it gets dolled up, or turns into legend more so, where we idolize some of the heroic figures and ignore the fact that slavery and such were still okay to these revolutionary heroes in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
and I was also asking about the Pentateuch. I assume the penta part of it means 5. What's the last root? Any idea?
Tuch? I believe teachings.
Yeah, it may be based on the word Torah. I would have to check that out for sure, though.
Right.
All right. And anything about their authorship? I guess you said that, at least Deuteronomy, you put an estimated date on it.
Right. The other ones, I haven't gotten to read on that subject yet, though I have interest in it, but at the college I went to, which is Bible College, they said that there were about 4 different authors and a redactor being the editor, and the way they distinguish the others from each other, and I know there are 5 books and 4 authors, but a lot of the authors, added to each other's books. The way they can tell is the style of the Hebrew is different from what we found, between varying centuries. So they're able to identify later authorship, earlier authorship, and see where they've edited each other.
Okay, and you named them something like something redactor and redactor.
Oh.
That list again, more slowly.
Well, I didn't list the different authors. They don't have names, for example. They simply identify them usually with letters to stand for certain things. I think it's JEDP.
Yeah, J is German. The Germans, their J is pronounced like a Y.
Right. So
and so it's built on the name Yahweh.
Right, the Yahwehs.
And in German, that would be with a J. So the texts in the Pentateuch that emphasize the God Yahweh, that has its own characteristics, and that's called the J text, or the Yahweh text.
And the E text was
and the Elohim is another name for God, and that has seemingly another literary tradition.
Right.
And then there is a Deuteronomy, of course, we've already talked about, and then there's what's called the priestly, which is later, and it's a rewriting. But the word redactor means something like editor and rewriter.
Right.
In other words, each of them.
The redactor.
Yeah, each of them had an agenda, a point to try to. They rewrote the material often to fit their particular ideology.
Okay.
So
one last question, then I hope other people will call in.
Okay.
Any idea which author incorporated the flood story?
Oh, we have no idea.
Because of course it comes with flood story in Gilgamesh that is so very similar.
You have about at least 3 accounts of a flood in the Middle East, and of course it wouldn't be surprising, because if you're going to have a lot of rain in any culture, you're going to have flood stories.
I did read I believe the book was Satan, a biography by author Henry Ansgar Kelly, that Genesis 1 through 11 is believed to have been written much later, however, because part of the reason why they think so is because none of the rest of the Hebrew scriptures refer back to Adam, Eve, Noah at all. So it may have been written much, much later.
Yeah.
So does that answer your questions?
Yeah, that's cool. Let me clear the line. I hope you get some other callers. Thanks much.
All right. Thank you, Faithless. You have a good day.
That's a real good point about the first 11 chapters. They seem to be more almost metaphysical. They got a structure.
Right, and the fact that Noah is never mentioned by anyone or appealed to, Adam and Eve, even by the authors of like Isaiah and so forth, never talk about them.
Yeah.
And when they're appealing to the failures of Israel, you'd think they'd also appeal to the failures of Adam, like Paul and such too.
Well, thou shalt have no other gods before me usually gives birth to don't have any graven images of a god. Now, I think there's a background to this. See what you think. Is there were many, many religions who had, and with the religion with the state combined, they had images, or what the Hebrew Bible could be translated idols, graven images, which were like flags.
Right.
And they could be, you can find some of them on the pyramids, for example, or at least in Egypt, some of the animal pictures. And you had the bull, some think the god El and bull maybe come together.
Maybe so.
And Moses had the serpent he lifted up.
Right, on the staff.
And that's woven into, all of these are woven into the story. Because the attempt of the later writers is to have a God with no images.
It's also interesting because one thing I often hear Christians talking about is that we are made in the image of God, and they usually use the analogy for whenever kings would establish their domain out in far reaches of their kingdoms, they would set up statues of themselves as representatives. So maybe in the realm of gods, they view these idols as, oh, God, you're imposing your God into our God's territory, our people, and thus they would not tolerate that sort of thing, saying, no, this is Yahweh's place, this is Yahweh's people, you don't get to do that here. That kind of thing.
It'd be like taking a German flag and planting it in Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's... Now, you mentioned the image of God. We have a phone call. Okay, that's good.
Oh, wrong one.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, caller?
Yes.
Hi, can we get a name or nickname?
Yeah, you can call me Charlie.
Charlie?
Okay, Charles.
Hello.
Yes. I just wanted to make first one comment and then a question.
Okay.
Previous caller had asked who wrote the flood story.
Oh.
Bible. And actually there are two of them, but they're interwoven.
Right.
And so they were interwoven because one was from the Yahwist and one was from the priestly class. And that's why there are two different stories, although it's hard to pick them out.
Yeah.
But if you look at Richard L.A. Friedman's book on who wrote the Bible, he does that for you. And for those who are interested, you can see why they are different.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah. So back to the topic, though, the Ten Commandments. The first commandment in particular, Joe said that it was sort of, I am the Lord, and you shall have no other gods before me. But the real Bible says something like, I am Yahweh, who brought thee out of slavery, up out of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. So this is really a Jewish tribal God speaking, right?
Right.
Yeah. In fact, it is an attempt to identify this God with the story of the Exodus. There's no question about that.
Right.
Now, there are some debate among scholars as whether or not that is original or whether there was another version of God with that story. And you have the Kenite theory, which I won't go into because that's another interesting story too. But I think your point is well taken. Is there before that thou shalt have no other gods? There's a reference to the God taking them out of Egypt.
Specific instance.
Yeah, and now that's a later writer, in my opinion, putting that in.
Well, in any case, we have a big push in Tennessee to mount the Ten Commandments in all courthouses.
Yeah.
And some people think this is a marvelous idea, and other people say that our laws come from the Ten Commandments.
Right.
But isn't that commandment, the way I stated it, totally anti-American? You have to worship this Jewish God, Yahweh?
I think so. I think
Well, of course it is.
people.
Yeah.
I think the reason why a lot of people like the sound of people being told that our laws came from the Ten Commandments, that marries the two things they love: their country, which it's all right to love your country, and then their beliefs, their specific beliefs about a specific belief system that they believe needs to be shared among all people. I think it definitely goes against the idea that there is freedom to have no gods, multiple gods, or different gods in general, different numbers of gods.
Now, there's no question that the Hebrew tradition in this, that is the Hebrew Bible tradition, not later Hebrews. Later Hebrews or Jews are quite different from this, but the early Hebrew is not religious liberty. I mean, that's the Hebrew Bible is not religious liberty by and large.
Absolutely not.
It is clearly not anything like what we call the First Amendment in the
or
in the
even
United
what we
States.
would call, even setting the specific Bill of Rights aside, it's not even what we would call American freedom in general, what we know in our societies. Because in Deuteronomy 13, the whole chapter is about if your family members tell you that they're going to believe something else and they advise you to do the same, you are to kill them. And if you hear of a city where people are doing this thing in mass, you're to go there, investigate it. If it's true, wipe out the city, never rebuild it, and that's it.
Yeah. My only point was that for these people who promote the Ten Commandments and hanging them in the courthouse, only the three of them: don't kill, don't steal, don't give false testimony. Those are common to every civilization. No matter whether they're secular or religious. So they can't really be said to be the basis of our laws out of the Ten Commandments.
Right.
And the rest of them are kind of anti-American, and some of them downright unconstitutional, like the first one, if you say you have to worship only Yahweh. So I just think that it's a good idea to get out there and tell people what the Ten Commandments actually are and how much they differ from what American ideals are.
Right.
So thanks very much for talking to
Thank you.
Thank you.
And talk to you again sometime.
We hope so.
Raise a very, very crucial question. As a matter of fact, the early Puritans in this country took those 10 Commandments, especially the first one, and they literally hanged Baptists because the Baptists preached a version of baptism and some other versions of their own religion, their own version of Christianity, and they simply committed murder against them.
Right.
Now, they got some precedent from this by reading the Hebrew Bible, which uses murder to enforce their religion.
Right, because when it comes to prioritizing those laws, especially, I'd say it's important to note the difference between Christianity and Judaism. Judaism doesn't believe that you're going to go to hell if you die a non-Jew. But Christians, on the other hand, believe that if you die non-Christian, at least a lot of Christians, to be fair, not all,
yeah, that's good,
believe that you will go to a place of eternal torture and torment. And so they believe that it's a more graver crime or sin, you might say, to let someone go around promoting other gods, which could get you sent to hell, versus killing that person in order to spare people that danger.
Yeah,
which is, I think, what they were.
That's the way they would put it. Yeah.
Which may be what they were thinking when they were hanging these poor people for having different opinions.
It was their rationale. Yeah. We have another phone call.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear our.
Hello, caller.
Hello.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Could we get a name or nickname?
Larry.
Larry. Oh.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about. There's a whole bunch more commandments in the Bible than just 10. And
Right.
How many are there supposed to be?
Oh.
Now that's a hard one.
I'm not sure. Oh.
And are we still supposed to be going along with those? Or did Jesus give us a whole new set or get rid of the old ones or whatever? I thought you might want to just address that.
It's
okay, and you should, because there are parts of the Old Testament which simply counter other parts of the Old Testament. I mean, the Bible is not one book. You have a variety of strains. For example, you have these murderous passages. You have other passages that say, in effect, don't forget, you were strangers in the land of Egypt, and therefore be kind to the strangers in our land. See, that's a completely different approach.
It's interesting because the authors of the Gospels, even though we don't know who they are, we know that they seem to have disagreements over whether or not the whole law should be followed or to what extent. We know that, for example, Matthew, the author of Matthew, that is, believed that the laws were good and should be continued to follow, and was actually writing in kind of in response and to try to correct to the author of Mark, who had Jesus breaking Sabbath law and so forth. And Matthew's, the Matthean account is, tries to set up Jesus as the paragon of holiness, whereas Mark just doesn't seem to care.
Well, what about that jot and tittle quote?
That's Matthew.
That's that all of the old laws are still there.
Yes.
And that we should obey them.
And he says that
you constantly run into these newer Christians who say, no, Jesus did away with the old laws. I'll take my answer off the air, off the stream, so you can go ahead and talk about it if you want.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The jot and tittle thing is interesting too, because reading on down, it goes on to say that unless your righteousness is greater than that of the Pharisees, you won't be getting in the kingdom of heaven. And so it seems to be implying that unless you're following these laws even better and with more, you might say, heart or concern than the Pharisees, then you're not even going to make it. And but that's the Matthean.
Yeah, it is conceivable that there was a historical Jesus who had a sense of humor, and so he said, "Be ye therefore perfect," knowing according to the Hebrew tradition, you're not going to be.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, there is an interesting passage in the Gospel of John, which is not in the better manuscripts, but is at least as old as some of the better manuscripts. And it sounds more like Luke, and it's the story of the woman taken in adultery, which counters the view in the Hebrew Bible of stoning a woman if she's caught in adultery.
Right. In fact,
and now what's interesting is Jesus says to her, where are your accusers?
Right.
And there are none. And she said, well, neither do I condemn thee. But then he adds, go and sin no more. He's not saying, okay, now we've done away with adultery. He's not doing that. He's simply saying, there's a different way of dealing with this rather than simply murdering people when they don't live up to the standards.
And interesting point. The earliest surviving copy of the Bible we have is known as the Codex Sinaiticus. And actually that text is not found in it, that particular passage. Like, it's not within the Bible that they formed at the council that first formed the somewhat official Bible, which still continue to be edited.
Like the longer part of Mark is not in it.
Right, and that's also not in the Codex either. But it's a good point. The story of the woman in adultery is very popular, especially today among Christians who want to put forward the idea that Jesus was telling you to not be like that law, that law was something entirely different, you're not supposed to follow it, and that you're no longer under it. Well, the thing is, it's not in the original. It wasn't even included in the original Bible, and it flies in the face of the old laws.
It seems to be a story at least as authentic as anything in the New Testament, going back to a historical. If anything goes back to the historical Jesus, that story does. But it sounds more like Luke than the Gospel of John. And where it, in other words, we don't have, see, the problem is we do not have the original documents of any passage in the Bible.
Right.
So we have copies of copies, and we don't know for sure how many in between.
The most they can do is compare the copies and see what the timings were for them and such.
And the copies don't always agree on every point.
Right.
So we work on conjectures, trying to put together what we think is the original.
Right.
But it is conjectural.
Take a moment to remind viewers this is a call-in show. We have only one line, but we encourage you to continue to try to call in, or to wait after the caller is off the air. And if you can't get through, you can email us questions live at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Let's move. If you can't, don't remember the. Let's see. Is it time for us to take a mid-program break here? Let's see.
Oh.
It might be, come to think of it.
Okay. In case you were just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Community Access Television. We can also be seen streaming live online. For fans outside Knoxville area, go to ctvknox.org.
Yeah. Okay, and remember we have our email, and you can send us email messages, which we'll pay attention to and try to learn from it, because this is a learning experience for all of us.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or also known as ASK, meets several times during the week, usually about twice. And tonight we have a meetup at Barley's Taproom Pizzeria. You can go ahead on down there. There's people there already. And we just, we invite everyone to come and converse about whatever you'd like and have fun.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and also don't forget the Freethought Forum and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. And what's the name of the community college where they meet?
Pellissippi State Community College.
At the cafeteria there. Very good open place.
Yes. Speaker. Yes. And to remind our viewers, or for those just tuning in, on Sunday, May 6th, the Rationalists of East Tennessee will host a special event. Their annual public lecture will feature Dr. J. Anderson Thompson, who will talk about how human minds build and believe in gods. And he is a staff psychiatrist at the University of Virginia and also has his own private practice. Dr. Thompson will discuss how the cognitive neurosciences have mapped out the reasons human minds produce beliefs in gods and other supernatural beings. This should be a topic of interest both to atheists and theists, The lecture will take place at 2 p.m. in the Goins Auditorium of the Pellissippi State Community College. See rationalist.org for directions.
Did we have another call?
Not yet.
Okay.
I think he's still talking to the person.
There's a Jewish psychiatrist who has written a book on the origin of religion and on his own tradition that's very interesting. I can't think of his name offhand, but the name of the book, I think, is called The Story of the Story, and it's an exceedingly interesting book. He has training both in his Hebrew background and his psychiatric background, and keep in mind that Papa Freud was himself in the Jewish tradition.
Okay.
Okay, but let's go on to no graven images. I think there was a move, particularly in later Hebrew tradition, to universalize the religion.
No.
And to first of all get Jerusalem as the capital, and then make it a universal religion.
Statewide religion.
Yeah, and maybe a universal if possible, because by the time you get to the Isaiah, it is. And in doing that, they did away, or wanted to do away with the graven images. Now, they did have the cherubim on the ark,
yes,
which is a kind of hangover, and you had the snake of Moses. But in their theory is that God does not have a body. Now, it's true in Exodus 33, Moses wants to see God's face, and God won't let him, and so he puts his hand over Moses' eyes and passes by, and it allows Moses to see his back.
There's also an interesting point to be made about idols, because one of the common reasons for idols to exist in cultures was to have a physical thing for the God to enter into to communicate with. Technically, the Israelites had an idol. They had the Ark of the Covenant where God would reside and be with them.
With a cherubim there.
And that's where, and the priest had to go into the Holy of Holies where the Ark was to communicate with God. So in a sense, the Hebrews did practice a form of idolatry, but there was only one idol where he would be.
It's interesting. They were trying to say, don't give God an image.
Right.
But
it also seemed to wipe out competition even among other Jews.
There's no question.
Another Jew couldn't say, well, this is where God will be.
Yeah.
No, it's just the Ark of the Covenant.
This is it, yeah.
Right.
Oh, very, very much so.
Right.
And there is a tradition that says Moses spoke with God face to face, which seemingly contradicts the notion that he could not see God's face. And that's why there is a propensity in religions, often when it's being rewritten, to turn some of it into what's called spiritualizing.
Right.
That is, don't make it literal anymore, make it metaphorical. Don't make it...
Kind of makes it more vague.
Don't make it the way it sounds, is what it amounts to.
It has a deeper meaning.
Yeah, deeper meaning. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So there was an enormous amount of rivalry among... this is tribalism. You got the 10 tribes, and you had other tribes.
Right.
And each of the tribes had their own totem.
Yes.
Their own image. And I think what this later Hebrew tradition is trying to do is rework all of these into one tradition. Now, you see this today, people trying to rework the Founding Fathers.
We have a caller.
Oh, good. Let's see what our caller's got to say.
Hello, caller.
Go.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. What name or nickname can we call you by?
Well, my name is John.
John?
Go ahead, John.
Well, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing well.
Well, so I heard you talking about the 10 Commandments today. I don't actually have my TV on.
Okay.
And which one are you talking about right now?
First.
First and second.
Okay. And that would be the graven images?
And no gods before me.
Yes. So I would like to know your opinion on that first before I say anything.
Okay. Opinion on them exactly. What do you mean?
The graven images.
Okay. About good or bad, or what we think they were for?
Yes.
All of it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
With regard to graven images, I think that as we've been discussing, the people who had graven images had it as a way of symbolically marking places as, protected by this deity, or this place celebrates this deity, or at least my house does. Other peoples, especially in antiquity, believed that it was a physical thing for the god to enter into, for them to communicate and commune with. I don't think there's any harm in people having idols with in that sense. Not necessarily any direct harm. I'd say the only indirect harm could possibly arise is if you had a schizophrenic who thought that the idol was telling him to do something. So that's the most I would say on that. Joe?
Yeah, people need some kind of physical thing to relate to, but it doesn't mean. But for example, recently my wife realized that our engagement ring has been lost. Oh. She couldn't wear it because her finger is too small. The ring just after so many years, the ring gets worn, and anyhow, we can't find it. And you could say, well, it's just a ring, but it isn't just a ring.
Yeah, it represents something.
It represents something very crucial.
Very important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, if I'm understanding what Ben is saying, these images had some meaning to these people.
Right.
Yeah.
And you carry pictures of people today, and we post pictures of people because that's meaningful to us.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I would have to say my opinion on that. Like idolizing things. We make idols. It seems like in this day and age we make idols out of, for example, technology. We're all so into our iPhones or our computers, and so we don't have time for, in the Christian sense, we don't have time for God, or we don't have time for our family.
I see your point. Sometimes we do deify. I remember a teenager years ago seemed to me to fall in love with his car so much that I said, I need to give you a prayer rug to put down in front of it because
you pray to it.
You worship it. And I think
it's obsession.
And some people can idolize their own country and make it so that it is a god.
Yeah.
And that's idolatry. And I think your point, if I'm understanding, is well taken. It's a dangerous thing to try to make something into a god that's infallible. And I remember there used to be a song by Elvis the Pelvis, and I won't try to sing it. Lady of Spain, we adore you. When we were teenagers, we translated, we abhor you. But
do you agree that some people, or a lot of people, especially here in America, have a tendency to idolize, say, the Constitution?
Yes, and some people, I would be guilty of it a time or two, maybe try and twist the words of the Constitution to get something that they want. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Some people do that, yeah.
But I don't know what I would say about idolizing things. I would say that if it is taking away from time with your family, or for Christians, if it's taking away from your time with God, then you might need to let that go.
Would you say there's a distinction between something having authority and something being infallible? There's a difference between liking the object, and there's a difference between being obsessed with that object and not being able to leave, and having in your mind that you're not going to be able to live without it.
Right, a healthy life.
Yeah.
To be able to live without being contingent upon that.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's true. I think that's the case in a lot of ways. Like, a lot of people even idolize their families, or even their gods, you might say, in a sense, that they don't feel they could live without those things if they didn't exist.
Yeah. But, Christians, they would believe, they need their God, because to them there is no point in living without that God.
Yeah. They grow so fond or attached or connected to it that they think that's the case.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, we can see this happen in other people. When we study the history of the rise of Nazism, you can see an attempt to idolize the state, to deify. And then you have...
Even with communism.
Yeah, communism. You have the Führer, the leader.
Yeah.
It's almost as if Hitler was turned into a messiah.
Right.
And the famous theologian Karl Barth early saw that this was idolatry.
Right.
And early he saw it, and they kicked him out.
Right.
He left in a hurry. And Paul Tillich, a famous Christian theologian, had to leave because he saw the idolatry in statism.
I would agree with you on that. I think that in communist countries with a more, or just a country with a more strict government, that leaders tend to be made into idols.
Well, I would point out, of course, you may agree that not all necessarily communistic countries are bad. You know, it's usually the ones that are more authoritarian about it.
Yes.
Right.
And well, really quick, is there another caller waiting? Because I don't want to clog up time.
There's only one line, so it's not like we have another line with a caller waiting. It's just they'll be able to call in once we're done with this conversation.
Okay.
But if you wanted to ask anything else, please feel free.
Okay. Well, first of all, you guys are doing a good job, and
thank you.
I can't have I don't have the TV on right now, but I've gotten a glimpse of the show before, and it looks really interesting. So
cool.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you are in the area, we invite you to come out to Barley's this evening if you are free. We do have a meetup at the bar, and anyone can find us by the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion sitting on the table.
Ah, cool. What was I going to say? The thing that bothers me is just the idols one. I really wish I could see people be more with their family, because I had a friend, and he divorced his wife because they just had no time with each other anymore, because she was always on her iPhone, and it was almost like she was addicted to the iPhone. And technology can be good, and when it comes to an obsession like that,
right,
and when she didn't have time for her husband and her kids, that's when it just... And when they tried to work it out, she just couldn't stop. She just said she couldn't live without it. So
that's actually also common in even World of Warcraft players, unfortunately. I mean, people can become addicted. I think it may be psychological thing of just being addicted to doing something.
I mean, it could be anything. Anything could turn into that idol that you just always have to have.
Right.
So it's almost as if an idol, if we look at it psychologically, an idol is a way of eliminating other important experiences, and in that sense, you're using the word obsession. It seems to me to be quite accurate. If you become so obsessed that all these other important human experiences
they shrink.
And you can make religion do that, or you can make anything.
Sure.
Dude, you can make a religion out of football in that respect. You can idolize.
Yeah. All right. So
I don't want to commit blasphemy in East Tennessee,
but was there anything else you wish to say or ask, or?
There is not.
All right. Well, thank you, John.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right.
All right.
Well, we could blend on to the next commandment, because it's so connected, is not taking the name of a god, or this God, in vain.
Right.
And what does that mean, to take it in vain, or don't use it lightly? Now, we all know, don't curse and use the name God. I think the passage means a lot more than this. In fact, I would argue that many times it seems to me some preachers take the name of God lightly or in vain. They use it for political purposes, and that seems to me, to be blunt, a kind of blasphemy. to use the name God to promote your particular
personal gain.
Yeah, your particular political style. Like it's almost waving the God flag to get your party elected.
I think, from what I understand, the commandment was more so against the idea that people would use God or appeal to God into making vows, and that then they wouldn't keep those vows. And that really bothered them. They said, no, if your yes be yes, your no be no. If you're going to do something, do it. Oh, we have a caller?
Go ahead, caller.
Hello, caller.
Yeah, hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Can we get a name or nickname?
Yeah, my name's Dean.
Dean?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, you guys doing okay today?
We are. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I guess really what I had was a question and a comment, I guess.
Sure.
You look through history and everything, and you notice there's, with forms of government, there's always it seems like a cohesive form of religion that goes along with it. Maybe not even in a spiritual sense, and I'm sure a lot of the leaders view it that way more often than not. It's more of an organizational sense, I guess, to keep everybody under control.
In line.
Organized. So you know where things are, and you can be in control.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I guess my question is, throughout history, if you guys are aware, have there ever been any, like, civilized societies that have existed with a form of government that didn't have a stable form of religion? You know, whether it be the leader was the god or there was a separate god that was the god. You know what I mean?
Okay, so they didn't have are you saying a religion that's connected to the state?
Right, yeah, well, anything, I guess. Like, they just didn't have a structured belief system that went along with their forms of laws that was derived from a religion.
Okay.
I think most of American history would be an example of that.
Well, arguably, yes. America could be a good example for that. And of course, it's more so a recent history thing because, the farther back you go, the more primitive form of government and the more tied to cultures, specific cultures that is. But when you had intermingling of races and belief systems, it became much more difficult, and thus you had the rise of a secular state.
Right. It seems like ours came along after we made the mistake of, seeing what church and state can be. It became more of a regulation not to be.
Well, Jefferson...
like, this is kind of what we're not going to do because we've seen the mistakes made from it.
Yes.
I was just wondering if one has, if there's throughout the course of history, because I don't know of any. I mean, even like the Native Americans who we viewed as godless, they still had, spiritual forms and deities that they looked to for hope and guidance and things.
Right. So you're asking if there's ever been, apart from America, other nations which have run without a set system of spiritual beliefs.
Right, and I do my own research, and I can't really find any. And so I guess that begs the next question: is it possible to have it, like to have government without religion?
You could say that maybe Norway, one of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, even though it's officially Lutheran.
Right.
It's mostly a social phenomenon.
Right.
It's not.
A lot of the European nations today are largely non-religious, like a lot of them. Not necessarily the majority of all the population, but are the dominant group. You might say the non-religious factor. Now they may believe in ghosts, maybe, but they don't have a set, coherent, collection of beliefs that is like their past mythology that leads them into the future.
Yeah, it's not required for office.
So I mean, while the states are not officially secular in that sense, we do see large groups of people who are like that.
Right.
But I would say prior to current situations, we probably have not seen that before. So I would agree with your first assessment that your comment that there just seem to be. To your question about is it possible, I would say it's possible. Right now we're testing that. We're testing how that can run and how it can go. And so far it's working, even if our economics are a little messed up.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that makes sense.
What do you think?
I don't know. It's weird that we have to. It seems like our beliefs run us so much, that we have to. use it for basis of organization just to get things done. You know, I don't know. It just seems odd to me. And I appreciate your guys' comments. I was really just curious to know if there was civilizations that, you know, that could thrive and move on without having like structured belief systems and gods, and that's the way that it has to be, you know, get things done.
Yeah. Rhode Island was founded by Roger Williams to be just that, a state which did not require any religion, which permitted every religion so long as they kept the civil peace. That was right. In other words, it was a state designed to have religious liberty, and it became a model for Jefferson, I think.
Right.
So I think we'll just have to wait and see how that'll go.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like we're going to have to get past the thought of, you know, there being some golden city up there, just to be able to get a rocket past it. You know what I mean? I mean, because that's eventually what it's going to come down to, and you're going to have to get past those beliefs, I think, to get us off this planet.
Sure, to be able to progress beyond.
Yeah, because it's going to have to be a whole entire world effort to do that.
Right, or at least to get rid of the geocentric view of religion, that, you know, it's all about this planet.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because it's so much more than that. We're so minuscule in so many people.
Right.
And I try to talk to the people who are just engraved in that religion and ask them that question, you know, and I don't know, the conversation just always seems to stop right there, you know.
You know, King James, who set up a committee to do the translation of the Bible, regarded the state and the church to be a union, and regarded himself to be the head of the state. And
how convenient. You know?
And he did a point. This is why some of the founding fathers and mothers came over here.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, Nero did the same thing.
Baptists, for example, at one time were not permitted to be in London because it was thought they would pollute the morals of the people.
Right. It's why you've seen, and I think also the founding fathers may have also been looking at the expulsion of Jews and other groups of people from different lands too, as a result of, you know, the Inquisitions or whatever, or what have you.
Yeah.
And thought, you know, we don't want that happening to us, so let's not do that.
Yeah.
We've got the law pending here in Tennessee as to whether or not to require capital punishment for people who practice abortion.
Oh, yeah.
And that looks to me like government's stepping over beyond what...
That's not the idea of liberty at all.
What it amounts to is using murder now to enforce a particular version of religion.
Right.
Right.
So,
it's somebody's got an agenda up there, and they're probably, you know, 15 steps ahead of us.
So,
that's what they do, you know, so good luck to them, but I'm going to keep doing my research, keep my knowledge doors open, and I hope you guys do the same thing. And
thank you, Dean. I would like to invite you out to the Atheist Society of Knoxville meetup tonight if you are free. It's at Bartley's Tap Room and Pizzeria.
I might not be able to make it tonight, but you guys have like a schedule?
Yeah, it's every Tuesday. Every Tuesday about 5:30.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to stop in sometime.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we've got to let you go and close the show.
Hey, I've enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You take care.
Mm-hmm.
Bye. All right.
Let's close, huh?
It's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
And please give us some feedback, if you would, because that helps us to know what our future plans are going to be and what you'd be interested in. And then the next time we'll talk about another commandment.
Right. And you can leave us feedback by leaving us voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. You can see the show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Knoxville station at 2200 Universal Time Worldwide at ctvknox.org.
Okay, and there are three groups, or three people. We got Jonas, we got Sam, and also the staff here at the radio.
We thank them
for the TV station. That we want to thank them for